right, well, let's get started. I'm gonna
Okay.
introduce myself to all of your people and anybody else who's on here. First of all, my name is
Okay.
Nikki Aiello, and I'm a recovery and life transformation coach and a yoga teacher here in Denver. I've started doing these interviews because I want to provide my people, my clients, my friends, everybody, incredible resources and education about just so much stuff that I've utilized for my own recovery and kind of wellness journey, including Ionahs acupuncture, as well as inspiration. Sometimes I have, artists of different kinds of, or people who just do really unique things. So not only are they informational and educational for wellness, but they're also just inspiring and fun. So that's why I do this. And I work as a recovery and life transformation coach. I work with individuals not just coming out of not in recovery from substance abuse only, but also from any major destabilizing life transition, such as a divorce, a breakup, a stage of life change like retirement or empty nesting, anything that's thrown somebody for a loop and they need help kind of getting up, shaking off the dust, and sorting out their priorities and moving forward. So that is what I do, and I'm happy to have you all here. Again, my name's Nikki. And so my guest today, as many of you know, is Ionah de Freitas. She has been a friend of mine for many years now, since I moved back to Colorado. I met her shortly after, so probably like 4 or 5 years ago. And she was still in school when I met her, and now she is a full-fledged practicing acupuncturist. And she has been my acupuncturist at times too, and healer. And she's amazing. So I speak from experience, but I want to give her a formal introduction here, and then I'll have her jump in as well. So Ionah de Freitas is an entrepreneur and an NCCAOM board certified acupuncturist specializing in 5-element acupuncture and aroma point therapy. She is the sole owner and practitioner of En Route Acupuncture in the Sunnyside neighborhood of Denver, Colorado. She's passionate about helping people tap into their authentic nature through the lens of 5-element acupuncture and essential oils, and uses that knowledge to find optimal health and well-being. Through conversation, compassionate listening, and the power of energy medicine, she helps her clients stay on their lives' paths, whatever that may be for them. I like that. So welcome, Ionah. Please.
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
yeah, I'm really happy. Thanks for agreeing to do this, to show yourself to the world, a dog, and
Sure.
um,
You know how much I love that.
I know, but like even just the other day when we were kind of getting ready for this, it was like we were talking about what we were going to talk about, and you just start flowing because what you do is so important for people to learn, and it's what it just came very easily. It's not like you're resisting it. You have information and education to share, so that's what it is.
Thank you.
It's not about
Thanks.
your ego. It's about you as a healer and people needing to you know find you and work with you.
Thanks,
So
love.
tell everybody, if there anything that I, didn't mention that you want to, that you mention about yourself, or do you want to just go into telling us about what 5 elements acupuncture is and aroma point therapy?
Sure. We can do that.
Okay.
Um, I think most people know my backstory. Most people who are on know my backstory some, so
Okay.
I don't need to share that, I don't think.
Okay.
But yes, I started practicing about 5 years ago. I attended a school not far from here in Louisville, Colorado, called the Institute of Taoist Education and Acupuncture, also known as ITEA. And luckily for me, it is a 5-element acupuncture school, and 5-element was the type of acupuncture that I was initially introduced to almost 30 years ago. So that was the first time when I was in my early 20s that I experienced any type of energy medicine, anything that was not Western medicine. And it came at a time in my life that was incredibly difficult. And I was going through a lot of transition and a lot of trauma. And my friend Kathleen, who at the time had just graduated as an acupuncturist and was a direct student of J.R. Worsley, who has since passed, but he is the gentleman sort of credited with bringing a certain type of 5-element acupuncture to the West. And she and I were friends. We were working together in a cafe, and there's a whole story behind that too, which is very exciting, but not enough time to get into it here. Anyway, she had just graduated and wasn't quite ready to practice, so she suggested I see a friend of hers who she had gone to school with, Laura Barnard, whose name now is Laura Stelmach, and she was my first practitioner, and I was so lucky to have her in my life at that time. And so I used acupuncture without really knowing much about it. I just knew that it worked, and what I was there for was just, I guess, emotional healing more than anything else. I had no idea that acupuncture could function in that way. Certainly had heard about it, but more equated it with, helping with physical issues like back pain or shoulder pain, something like that. But it really, what it did is it moved me out of a very, very dark place in my life that was super chaotic and full of indecision and upheaval, I guess. And it sort of got me back on my path, if that makes sense.
Amazing.
While permitting me to move forward in life without like getting stuck where I was at that time. So staying stuck. So that was my first experience with it, and then I let it go. I let acupuncture go for a long, long time, and dabbled in TCM, and I'll talk about the differences in a minute between the two. Dabbled in TCM for physical issues, and had some nice acupuncturists, good acupuncturists in that time as well. And then fast forward many, many years later, I was again in another sort of emotional, storm. And I ran into my friend Kathleen, who by then had been practicing 5-element for over 20 years. And she it was funny because we hadn't seen each other in a while, and she made a joke. She said something like, "When are you going to go to acupuncture school?" And I was like, my life was such chaos again at that time. I was like, I don't think I'm going to go to acupuncture school ever. But it jogged my memory of how useful 5-element had been years prior. And so I had been telling people to go see Kathleen for years and years and years. I just hadn't seen her myself. So I booked an appointment with her, and after a few sessions, I remembered, like, my body memory was so much connected to how I felt after my first experience with it, which was just like clarity and awareness that, oh my gosh, I can actually get through this phase again, that seemed like a revisiting in some ways of what had happened before. So anywho, after a few sessions, I actually did want to go to acupuncture school because I remembered, holy shit, this stuff works. And so I did. At 40, I decided to go back to school, and I got my master's at ITEA, and then became board certified a year later to practice. So so that's that. And why I chose 5-element was because it's what I knew best, and what resonated with me most. That's why I chose it, because there are lots of different schools of acupuncture. None of them are right or wrong, and none of them are better than the other. They're just different. There's Japanese.
There's lots.
Acupuncture.
Oh, okay.
There's lots. Yeah, there's Korean acupuncture. There's traditional Chinese medicine known as TCM here in the West. There's 5-element, and within 5-element, there are different types of 5-element, not different types, but different ways to practice it. And I went to a school that was specifically Worsley classical 5-element acupuncture. So I learned that style, and it's mostly what I practice, but I also, because I've learned other things since I left school, I also incorporate those into my practice as well. And that's, I think, generally what most practitioners will end up doing. Continuing education is a huge part of what we do, and we keep learning and learning, and we just, you keep integrating what you learn, and then you develop your own practice, and then you attract people who are attracted to the way that you practice. So yeah, I just want to stress that there's no one way that's better than the other. They're just different.
Okay.
Most people are familiar with TCM in the West, and stylistically they differ in many ways. With TCM, needles are generally put in to the body, and many more than 5-element practitioners normally would use, and they're left in. After the initial consultation and after the pulse diagnosis and the tongue diagnosis that TCM practitioners use, then they'll decide on a course of action and put the needles in, and then they'll leave the patient with needles in for 20 to 30 minutes, and they leave the room. And stylistically, that's very different, because in 5-element, in general, we put a needle in to make connection with the chi at the acupuncture point. And then once we do that, we take the needle out, and we never leave the patient or client. We're always with them. And our intake is generally a little bit longer. We spend a lot of time in conversation, getting to know where that person is today, like on the day that you're visiting with them, seeing them, taking care of them, because as you know, things shift from day to day with most people. So it's important to meet somebody where they are at, rather than just based on, history or anything else, constitution. Do you have any questions so far?
Yeah, so that's, kind of like stylistically, as far as the actual, needles when you're in the room. But as far as tell me if I'm correct, or expand on my interpretation of my experience with you. 5-element or is it 5 elements acupuncture?
5-element.
5-element acupuncture.
Known as classical 5-element acupuncture, depending on who you talk to.
Okay.
Words say 5-element acupuncture. Lots of different ways.
Lots of different ways. I'll just say 5-element acupuncture. So it seems like it's much more mind, body, spirit, and more people would. I'm not sure if people come to you for specifically like back pain, or if more people come to you because they want a holistic sort of healing modality. I mean, I know in the past I've gone to TCM practitioners for specific physical issues, but I went to you because I just knew that it was a whole body rebalancing everything. So I do feel, I mean, is that kind of what it's like differentially?
Yeah, for sure. That is a big part of it. And TCM practitioners certainly do. Acupuncture is holistic medicine. There's no divorce between body, mind, and spirit. That's where the confusion, or I suppose the discrepancy lies sometimes when people are trying to note the difference between TCM and 5-element. In 5-element, we don't divorce the spirit from the body and mind, so we treat a lot of spirit issues or emotional issues. Whereas TCM, which really came out of the Chinese Cultural Revolution, before that, all Chinese medicine was Chinese medicine, all acupuncture was classical Chinese medicine. That never divorced what goes on in a person's emotional life or spirit from what goes on in their body and mind. And when Mao, during the Cultural Revolution, Mao pretty much disallowed that practice to continue as it had for thousands and thousands of years, because he wanted to align their medicine more with Western medicine. So, and in Western medicine, as you know, a lot of it is chasing symptoms and trying to figure out, okay, this is wrong, so how are we going to fix this thing? And it divorces actually even pieces of our body from one another, which is why we have so many specialties in Western medicine, which I never poo-poo. Western medicine is absolutely essential for certain things, but so the version of acupuncture that the West got initially was that TCM version. And yes, there were practitioners in mainland China that scattered and went elsewhere to be able to practice the way that they had always practiced. And this is where J.R. Worsley came in, and he traveled and he met these practitioners, and he learned that very ancient way of practicing acupuncture and brought it to the West, and then, had to evolve it for the Western mind somewhat. So,
Okay.
so that's a difference there. And, I never shy away from saying to somebody, I definitely do help people when they're having emotional issues. And I don't tell people that I can't help them with their back pain, but we usually get around to them being educated about the fact that their back pain is probably connected to something much deeper than just back pain, right? An example that I can give for myself is that the second time around, when I sought 5-element acupuncture for myself, I did have shoulder pain. I had a frozen shoulder. I couldn't lift my arm above, midway, and couldn't take my shirt off, and I was really frozen on, I think it was the left side. And that's coincidentally, I don't think it was coincidence, but I ran into Kathleen, and I the first thing I mentioned to her was my shoulder, and she had no idea what was going on in my life because we had not been in close contact at that point. So when I finally went to her for my first appointment, the shoulder definitely was a consideration. She wasn't ignoring the fact that I had a frozen shoulder, because that was debilitating. But we soon got into what was going on that could have led to me having a shoulder issue, like including the burden that I was holding, literally, that I wasn't knowing how to let go of. And so we addressed that root issue. And pretty much after that first session, I didn't really think about my shoulder. It's not like it disappeared after one session, but that's not what my focus was on in my healing experience with Kathleen. And it did work itself out. So, we were also addressing physical manifestations of that root cause at the same time that we were addressing my spirit, which was in very much dire need of help and attention. So, so I think that's what I love so much about this medicine, is that it never divorces those three things. Like there's always a mental, spirit, and emotional component, or a physical component, not always physical, that we can see, but all these unknowns that we have, these pains, these shifts in our bodies that seem so mysterious to us, often have a clearer root cause if we just dig a little bit deeper. And that's what I love about 5-element. It's like sleuthing, you're just like trying to figure out what's really going on here. Yeah, I see the headaches. I see that you have headaches. I see that you have back pain. I see that you have recurring wrist pain. What else is going on here? And obviously sometimes it's because somebody overuses that part of their body, but that's also something to think about. Like, why are you overusing that? Why are you misusing that piece of yourself?
Right.
So
I want to lay out what all I want to cover in the remaining time.
Sure.
So that we can, I want to return to kind of what you're talking about now, and have you just give us in a nutshell what it's like to have, a new patient, and, kind of just that experience of them coming in and moving forward. But before we do that, I want to talk about aroma point therapy and have you tell us what that is.
Yes. So a few years ago, I had the great good fortune of coming across Tiffany Carroll in my life. I was literally in bed looking some notification came in through, I think, NCCAOM or another acupuncture group announcing a class that she was giving. And I think it was then called aroma point therapy, I think, 1 maybe, was the class that was being offered. And I went on and I thought, this is really interesting. And at that point, I used essential oils very casually. I used them in my diffuser, and I would just sniff them from the bottle, but I didn't have any strong connection to using them. But I love using them because it was a very potent connection to nature, which I just, nature's my big fix for most things. And so it was an easy fix for me to get whatever I needed just intuitively from the oils that I used, which were very few back then. So I looked at the class, and then I went on to Tiffany's website and saw her invitation to the class and her invitation to what she does, and I was just, floored by her. And my heart started racing, which is always a good sign, generally a good sign.
I was gonna say,
not always a good sign, but in that
Sometimes.
scenario, it's a good sign. When you just are in the midst of something that really excites you, and it's just like talking to you in a way that is just so real and deep. And so I just committed to her right then and there, and I signed up for that class, and then I signed up without ever meeting her for a year-long study with her, with the loveliest people. Melinda is one of them, who's on or was on earlier, and it just transformed my life. It transformed my practice, and what it taught me was a beautiful system of using essential oils on acupuncture points in a very similar way that we use the needles. And it's a way to bring the medicine of plants into acupuncture, essentially. And it works for me as a practitioner because it makes sense to me. And it works, I think, for my clients and patients because it offers a way to move energy that is very much in line with all that I learned as an acupuncturist. Tiffany, as well as an acupuncturist, has been for over 20-25 years, and so that was her foundation as well. And she moved into aroma point therapy with another acupuncturist named Peter Holmes. They worked together for a long time and then split, and now Tiffany does her own thing with that. But yeah, that's how I brought in the essential oils into my practice. It's all through learning with Tiffany. She's my main teacher there, and I continue to learn with her and take classes with her. So did that answer your question?
Partly. I'm going to say something and then I want to dive deeper. First
Sure.
of all, what you said about meeting her reminded me of the first time I met my last teacher that I studied with. I went to a yoga for addiction and codependency workshop as a teacher. And the day I met him, and that was when I was living in Phoenix and he was in Tucson, I made the trek somebody told me about, and I was like, oh, that sounds like, I feel like I'm working in this demographic anyway. I think I could use a mentor. And the same thing happened. Like instantly, I just knew it was somebody that I was meant to study with. And then following that, I ended up commuting once a month to LA for 6 months. And then I moved to LA to study with him.
Wow. Right.
I was that committed to that. So I wanted to just kind of make that connection, which will also lead me to tell our viewers right now that when this session ends, at 3, we're going to end it, and then we're going to start a new session, and Ionah's going to talk to us about essential oils, plant medicine, and recovery. Okay, so if you would like to plan to either stay for that, or if you know somebody who might really benefit this, shoot them a little text to get on in a half hour. Both of these will be recorded, and you can share them and watch them later, but I want to let you know that that's going to happen right after this, so that's going to be super cool. So getting back to the essential oils, I want to ask, so I see you told me a little bit about it and how it came into your world, but how does it actually, does the oil go into your skin? Like, do you put the oil here and then put the pin in and then it goes kind of in?
No, I've done this with you before, haven't I?
Yes, but I always have my eyes closed. I never open my eyes during session, and a lot of people haven't done this with you, and I want you to explain exactly what's up.
Yeah, of course. No. So what happens, I don't generally use an oil and a needle on the same point. So say I was choosing heart 7, which is this point here. It's just on the pinky side of the hand, or the wrist rather. It's called Shenmen. We also have Shenmen in the ear, but this is the second Shenmen, you can call it, or the first, which however you want to see it. So if I were to choose to use an oil on Shenmen, heart 7, which is the source point of the heart meridian, I would, first of all, I would choose an oil that resonates with that point, which is the beauty of aroma point therapy, is that you're really trying to sort of match the energetics of an oil with the energetics of an acupuncture point. So heart 7 being the source of the heart meridian is a point that we use a lot for, well, in 5-element it's a bit different, but because I would needle essentially this point on a fire element person, which I don't think there's enough time to go into all of this in this hour, but if that comes up again, I can explain a little bit more about the 5 elements and how we determine what points to use on what, on each person.
Mm-hmm.
But say I was deciding I'm not going to needle heart 7 on this person, I'm going to use an oil instead, I would probably choose something like rose or jasmine or ylang ylang. I might even ask, if I knew the person and they knew me and had experienced oils with me before, I might ask, which of those would you prefer that I put on this point? I might just choose it intuitively, what I think would be best. And those are all oils in the sweet fragrance category, and they're also considered euphoric. So they're essential to them is the fact that they make us feel safe and connected to ourselves. And so that would inform me why I would use that particular oil on that particular point. So yeah, I wouldn't put the oil on the point and then needle it. All I would do is place the oil on, a drop of the oil on my finger. And because it's a bilateral point, I would hold my finger on that point for 1 minute to 3 minutes. Very lightly. There's no need to put any pressure on the point. It's not like doing acupressure. You're just simply placing the oil on the point and then holding it with your finger. And I can do this both points on a person together because I have 2 fingers. But if you're doing it on yourself, which is a really great thing to do, you would do one side, generally the left side first, and then the right side. So that's how I would use the oils instead of the needles. And most of the time I will use both. I'll use oils and needles in a session. I also love the oil. Yeah, the oils are a great option though for people who have needle phobia, and there are lots of people who don't do acupuncture simply for the fact that they're deathly afraid of needles. And so it gives me the option to do an entire session just with oils. Mm-hmm. And that works beautifully. And I love doing that with children because they just don't need a heavy hand. Mm-hmm. When you work with kids, they're really receptive to the oils. They're receptive to moxa, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And you don't actually need to use the needles to get energy moving in a child or somebody who has a weakened system. You don't always have to use the heavy hammer of a needle.
Well, and to bring up that, that's a really 2 things that brings up for me is, one, it's a hard concept for the Western mind to process, like that something subtle and not intense or painful can actually be powerful.
Yes. I do get that question a lot. Like, yeah. Especially when people have experienced acupuncture with needles and haven't with the oils. I get that question, like, because some of the acupuncture points, as you've experienced, I'm sure, are very painful.
Well, that was going to be my second thing that I brought up.
Yes, especially on the extremities, like the nail points on the hands and the feet are really, I shouldn't say painful, although they are.
Intense.
But I should say very sensational and intense, right?
Sensational.
Yes.
And so, that is a difference. That is a difference between 5-element and TCM is, from my experience, you're going to feel the needle with 5-element because you're going straight to the point. You're going in and it's pretty intense and you pull out, versus TCM, where often if that happens, they think they move it to a different place. So I've found that, my experience with you was a whole different sort of thing, sensationally, and sometimes really intense, especially in those sensitive areas. So I just kind of wanted to point that out, that that you can expect that.
Yeah, you can expect that. I do try to, my friend Rachel, who I went to school with, she says spicy points. That's a good one. I like that. I try not to use painful because the
Yeah,
sensation for everyone is going to be very different, and
yeah,
people's nervous systems are different. Like for one person, they can handle a needle differently on their toe than another person, and so I don't like to use painful because for some people it's not pain, it's just an interesting sensation.
yeah.
Um, that said, there are people who are timid about needles that if I put a needle in their toe and that ramps up their nervous system, to me that's sort of self-defeating. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, is that worth is that worth doing that point if it's going to get this person all revved up?
Yeah.
And so I like having the option of using an oil there instead.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit, I mean, it's not my job to convince somebody that this is working either way with a needle or an oil,
Mm-hmm.
but generally they can feel that it is working.
Mm-hmm.
So
Next time I'm
it
in,
may be,
next time I'm in, I would like you to do oils on my feet.
okay, we can do that.
Great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a point on the bottom of the foot, kidney 1, which is, I've never had it needled for various reasons, but I use vetiver oil on there and it has the most amazing effect. And it is because vetiver as an oil is very, very grounding. It's a grass that has very long roots, and its job in nature is to stop soil erosion. That's why it's grown where it's grown in Southeast Asia, because it helps prevent mudslides because the roots are so deep.
Hmm. It's
And
one of my favorites. I didn't know that about it.
yes, and so kidney 1 is a point that we would use if somebody is really scattered and where their energy is not really contained in their body and they're really in their head about things, and sometimes if they're having a hard time sleeping because they just can't quiet their thoughts. Kidney 1 would be a very appropriate point to do for that person, either with a needle or with an oil. With a needle, it is very sensational, as you can imagine. And with vetiver, because you get that energy of the plant that is so rooting, it's a lovely combination. So that's one that I will often use an oil on. I
love
rarely
that.
needle that point anymore, actually, because it tends to stimulate the nervous system in a way that doesn't seem helpful.
Yeah, no,
And
the
that's a huge
anxiety.
departure. Yeah, the anxiety is not really worth bringing up for somebody generally. And that's a big departure from how I learned acupuncture at ITEA. And it's one of the departures. I still hold that tradition very dear, and I use it with a lot of reverence, but I also have just shifted into using my intuition a bit more with certain things. So
For
if that
sure.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Well, speaking
Yeah.
of all this, you and I talked about you giving a couple little demos, an oil demo, and then talking about moxa and giving a
Yeah,
demo with
sure.
that. So I have a few oils
Sure.
out.
Oh, good. We talked about bergamot, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So bergamot, I think this is one of the first oils I learned how to use with Tiffany.
Oh, by the way, let me
And
interrupt for just one
yeah,
second. I'm sorry, Ionah.
yeah.
If anybody wants to ask Ionah a question at some point during this, you can send those up in the little comments line or in the question mark box. And towards the end, I'll open those up.
Okay. So bergamot is it's of the citrus family.
Bergamot.
Yeah, a lot of people know it as the thing that makes their Earl Grey tea taste really yummy. That's the oil that they use in Earl Grey tea. It's very uplifting. I mean, you can just smell it and know that it's, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when I smell bergamot, it really like wakes me up and uplifts my spirit.
I love it. I'll tell you that last week when I had my friend on who she does the chakra sprays. She's got a luxury perfume line, that woman.
What's her name again?
Carrie Keller.
Carrie Keller, right.
Life aromatherapy. Anyway, one of my friends, Willow, was watching us, and she said, I want to scratch and sniff this interview.
I saw that, actually. I saw
So
that
I
on
bet people are
the
feeling that right
recording.
now. So smell,
Yeah.
smell.
Well, so one way to use bergamot actually is just if you're intimidated by using oils on points as you're just learning how to do that, you can simply just smell bergamot from the bottle. And I always say that I huff oils when I need them.
Isn't it funny how our lives have changed, our powders and our things that we
Yes,
sniff and
very different than before. Yes. And if that's all I have time for, that's all I have time for. I'll just take a quick sniff and go about my day. But I do use bergamot about twice a day, in the morning and at night, as a reset. What I learned from Tiffany is that it really is a beautiful oil to help balance the nervous system. So parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems, balance left and right hemispheres of the brain. And so um, the point that it, one of the points that it matches beautifully with is Shenmen in the ear. So point Shenmen, I forgot to bring my ear model. I was going to do that, but I think you can probably see. I think it's easiest to access Shenmen in the ear with the pinky finger
mm-hmm.
because it fits really nicely into the space that's at the very top of the ear. It's still in the inner ear. Yes, right there. So I always tell people to slide their pinky finger all the way in till it can't go any further, and then
Okay.
back it out into the fleshier part of that point.
Oh, okay.
So if you were to see Shenmen in a picture, it kind of looks like a fish's head, and you want to be like in the jowls of the fish, basically.
Okay.
So I always, you can think of it as parking the car all the way in until you touch the garage, and then backing it out a little bit
I like it.
until you're in the sweet spot.
Okay. Can we do it? Are you going to do it?
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. So, one thing quickly, I'm not going to go into oils and safety with oils because I think anybody who uses oil really needs to do that for themselves and needs to ensure that they know what's safe and what's not safe. And there's not enough time in this chat to go over that. But bergamot is in the citrus family, and a lot of the citrus oils are phototoxic. Which means that if you have it on your skin and you're exposed to the sun or a tanning booth, any UV rays, you will get a very, very bad burn. So
Wow.
you have to be super careful when you're using citrus oils. Like you never want to put lemon oil directly on your skin and go outside, or bergamot.
Wow.
You always want to dilute it to at least 25%, even less if you want to be super safe. And a lot of bergamots, not a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, some bergamots come. The one that I'm using now is from Acacia, which is it's a brand of oil that you can pick up at Vitamin Cottage or Whole Foods, or most natural food stores have it. And I like this bergamot because it says bergaptine free on the bottle, which means that the component of bergamot that makes it phototoxic or photosensitizing has been taken out. So it's extra safe to use one that is bergaptine free. It can also say FCF free. Tiffany has her own line of wonderful oils. Those are the ones that I use the most, called Monara. And her bergamot is FCF free. So
I have
be
her
super
link. I have her
careful.
link in the bio, everyone, by the way.
Oh,
So
perfect.
so you
Okay.
can go to
And I
her
think,
and buy some oils.
yes, and her oil company is called Monara, and I think it's Monara, www.monara.com. And just recently, she started offering already diluted oils, which is awesome, especially if you don't want to get into it's not a big deal to dilute your own oils. Um, it's just that you need extra bottles, and you need a carrier oil on hand, and it's definitely doable and it's not complicated. Um, But if you want to make it really easy for yourself and super safe, you could just order these oils diluted, and you don't lose any of the efficacy of the oil when you dilute it. So
Okay.
just knowing that. So okay, so bergamot, I'm going to do it in Shenmen. So I'm going to drop one drop on my pinky finger, And
Just
this
so you know,
bottle
by
is
the way, just a little time check. We've got 16 minutes.
okay.
Okay, I
Okay,
got one
so I'm gonna
drop on
drop
mine. Oops, I got
on
the
my
big
pinky.
drop. The big
Okay,
drop.
that's okay. So you're
Okay.
gonna tap your other pinky finger onto that pinky finger, and then you're just gonna slide both fingers into your ears and find that nice sort of wider part of um, the point there, Shenmen. It's in that wider part of that area of the ear, and then you just simply hold it there and breathe and center yourself. This action itself is super centering, the oil, the point combination. And then if you add just normal breathing, you're gonna soon feel a nice shift in your nervous system. And you can hold it for 1 to 3 minutes or longer, but generally not less than a minute. And
That's so great. I already love it. I hope you
yeah,
guys are getting to try this too. If not, you can try it afterwards. If you don't have bergamot, you can go get some.
yeah.
I
You
love it
can also
already.
use, yeah, bergamot works especially well there. You can also use, I mean, you can use rose there. You can use, depends on what effect you want to have, right? Um, so you can use sweet orange, which is a great one for kids when you use that in Shenmen to calm their spirit.
Okay,
Um,
I got to remember that because
so
I
lots of,
have wild orange. I don't have sweet orange.
I think you could probably use that wild orange too.
Okay.
Um, do you
Did
want to
you?
talk about another point combination, or
Yeah,
do you
let's
want
do
to move?
that. Let's do that. Let's talk
Okay.
about another point combination. If there's any questions, we can take those, and then if not, we can have time for moxa if you want to talk about moxa.
We have all of 2 viewers right now, so
Are you
please.
sure?
I think so.
Oh, we had a bunch of people sign on, but okay, cool. Well, then great. So
So
yeah,
if anybody has, any of you two have questions,
send it in. How come you
we
see
can,
that? Because I went to the little commenting and whatever. We don't have to talk about that. But I went to
I
all
don't
the,
know.
I guess I've seen all the people who've signed on.
Yeah.
Oh, I see that little
Well,
thing up there. Okay. I see it. Now
let's
I
go.
know. Okay.
You see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to Heart 7 because that's a really good point to know about.
Okay.
Heart 7, it's just at the wrist crease on the pinky side of the wrist. Yep, right there. It's, if you know your bones in the hand,
Mm-hmm.
it's right below the pisiform bone in that nice little channel there.
Cool.
So there are lots of oils that you can put on Heart 7 to calm the spirit. So again, this is the source point of the heart. So the heart meridian is part of the fire element. And sometimes when we've experienced any sort of shock or trauma or just a stressful situation, our heart can get agitated. And so that can look and feel like anxiety, racing heart, racing mind, because the mind and the heart, of course, are connected. Um, so one way to calm the spirit of the heart is to put, again, a sweet oil works really well here. We had talked about rose earlier, but you didn't have rose, but ylang is a great oil there, which Nikki has. I have, let's see, I have Tiffany's ylang here from Monara, which is really lovely. And you can also do a sweet woody oil there. So again, all these oils are divided into these really lovely fragrance
What's
categories.
a sweet woody one? Like a cedar?
So yeah, exactly. So cedar would be sweet woody, sandal would be sweet woody.
Mm.
So you could use either of those on Heart 7 again. And Heart 7 is lovely because if you're doing this on your own at home, you can put a drop of the oil on one Heart 7, say your left wrist, and then hold the other Heart 7 of your other hand or your other wrist right over it. So you can do them together.
Let me
Does that
see
make
what.
sense?
Oh, okay.
You
Yeah,
see that? Yeah, exactly.
that's pretty
Or you,
cool.
yeah, it's very cool. Or you can use your middle finger or your index finger. I kind of like to use the middle finger for this point, um, and do one side at a time.
Mm.
So you would just do left side, right side.
So
And
what's
also,
the?
again,
Go ahead.
go ahead. You go ahead.
What's, I mean, I think I can, sit with this, but I want you just to verbalize it. Like we're taking the energetics of a plant
Mm-hmm.
and and the body speaks the same language as the energetics of these plants. And that's why this works.
Yeah, the acupuncture point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's more complex than that, but that's essentially what it is. I mean, when you think about an essential oil, it's like the essence of a plant, right? It's its deepest, most vital piece. It's it's very concentrated. It's very potent, and you're putting that energetic of a plant and you're matching it with the energy of a point. So each acupuncture point is 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 used for different reasons, but it's always, again, there's never a divorce between the mind, and the spirit. So whether you're using it to address something in the meridian or the channel of that official, which in this case it would be the heart official, which is associated with the fire element. Um, if it's something that's going on physically in that channel, or if somebody's having stress, anxiety, and their heart is being affected, or just their spirit is being affected, that would be a very potent combination to do for them. So like a sweet woody like sandalwood, because it's a woody oil, woody oils tend to draw energy in towards the center. So thinking about like all the tree oils like black spruce and cedar, which you mentioned, and fir, pinyon, any of the tree oils, they draw energy in, like when we use them, um, so that our energy isn't scattered. So that's their beauty, is that they pull us in back to ourselves.
My friend who I mentioned before, Carrie Keller, last week,
Mm-hmm.
she's clairvoyant, and that's why she got into so much of this stuff is self-care to manage her energy. Because when you're
Yeah.
that sensitive to, all sorts of things,
Yes.
and she mentioned she's really drawn to the woody sense. So that makes
Yeah.
sense because
Yeah.
it keeps
Right.
most stuff in. And I like woods too, woody scents too. Like I love balsam
Yeah.
but I will say you said these are like euphorics, right? The
Rose,
lang-a-lang and
rose,
the bergamot.
not bergamot.
Oh, not
Bergamot
bergamot.
is not a euphoric. Rose, ylang ylang, or lang lang, however you like
Orange.
to say it. Jasmine,
Okay, not
neroli,
orange. What about orange?
not orange.
Okay,
Mm-mm.
because I feel a little
Neroli,
euphoric. Maybe it's the lang-a-lang, long-a-lang.
ylang ylang.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what the euphoric oils do is they sort of help us get into a very safe place. Really,
Yeah.
is what they do. They sort of ensconce us in a safe energy. So
Good
that
word.
makes sense, right? When you're feeling
Mm-hmm.
anxious, what you want most is to feel safe. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is a very direct way to help you feel safe again.
Will you show me the
And
point on, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead. What
Will
point?
you show me the point that I can put vetiver on my foot?
Yes. So I'm not in a position where I can actually show you my foot,
I can show
but
you my
maybe
foot.
you are.
Yeah.
Okay. So if this were my foot, okay, and this were the ball of my foot, kidney one would be, if you draw a line between your index finger or your second and third toe and get right into the dimple of the ball of the foot. So point your point your toes for me. Perfect. See where the dimple is? Yes, that's kidney one.
Oh, great.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's where you would put kidney one is called bubbling spring, and vetiver works beautifully there. Also, black spruce works well there. Cedar works well there. Again, anything that roots you.
Cool.
Any of those tree oils are really bringing the spirit of a tree into you. So,
I
they're
love that. What
they're
a great
bringing
ritual.
the energy in. I know, rooting you down and allowing you to sort of expand from a very rooted place. So,
Thank you.
um, yeah,
I'm gonna make these, I'm gonna do those three things in my
yes,
in my life for a while. I'm gonna make these 3 points my practice for a little while because I
that's
really
great.
feel like they're perfect. And
They
I
are.
imagine that this might be what you share with us in the recovery talk too a little bit, or no?
Hmm.
Maybe?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. those of
absolutely.
you who are watching, if you weren't on before, after this, Ionah and I are going to switch into recovery gear. We're going to start a new interview, and we're going to talk about aromatherapy or essential oils and recovery, and then
Mhm.
Ionah's journey, and maybe even my journey a little bit too with recovery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I feel like we needed so much more time to talk about the five elements and causative factor and constitutional factors and all of that, but it's just
Well,
not
that
enough
would be
time.
like a five, interview series, which I love too. But this like at least gets people a little bit of a kind of a washover,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
a lot of people don't know the difference. And then people could, so I'm going to take this opportunity now and let everybody know that you can. So if you're in the Denver area, Ionah is here in Sunnyside, which is like northwest of Denver, downtown Denver.
hmm
And that's where her practice is. And her email is on the description link for this interview. And her Instagram as well. So you can direct message her on Instagram. You can email her. And the links for the for the essential oils are in the bio. And you can also just message me if you have any difficulty with any of that, and reach out to her. And you're taking new clients right now, and you're practicing all
I
the
am.
protocols. So,
Yep, yep, yep.
and
Staying
such a
safe
great, such an
in my
important time of
practice.
year, such an important time of year right now to like kind of get ahead of the curve rather than like reaching out when you're, in desperation because the holidays have gotten to you and winter and COVID. Like it's such, I'm a preventative medicine person. I'm a Virgo, I'm a planner. So I'm always like
Yeah,
taking, as you've seen so many of my little tricks. I like to be ahead and kind of know that tough times are coming. So how can I fortify myself before they hit?
yeah, well said. Yeah, acupuncture is definitely preventative medicine. Absolutely.
And it's emergency too, right?
And it can be, absolutely, it can be emergency, but it works best as preventative medicine, absolutely. And yes, we're in a seasonal transition right now. We're just leaving late summer and moving into fall, and any seasonal transition is can be tricky for people. So whether it's going from spring to summer or late summer to fall to winter, whatever that transition is, can sometimes bring up a lot for people. So it is one way to get yourself in tune with not only seasonal shifts outside of you, but of course the seasonal shifts that are happening within you, because there's no distinction between inner and outer in Chinese medicine. We are a microcosm of the macrocosm. So what's happening outside of us is also happening inside of us. So
Yeah, I mean, just
anything
thinking
that
about
helps you
today,
connect. I
wind,
know.
just think about the wind blowing stuff around and parts of us that are kind of like dying and being released. But,
Yes,
we have, and we
exactly.
have to go inward for a while to
hmm
let everything build so we can bloom again. Like
Right.
it's a tough,
Yeah.
this has always been my toughest part of the year.
Yes. Yes. And all the seasons are essential, right? So this
Hmm.
coming into fall is our time to really take stock of things and understand what's of value to us and what no longer is of value to us and what we
Hmm.
can let go of so that when winter comes around,
Hmm.
which is our quieter season, it's a
Hmm.
time of quietude and contemplation. We can do that with a more settled spirit because we've already addressed the things that need to be addressed as far as letting things go that need to be let go of, and not in a way that's flippant in it, at all, because we do get attached to our things, to our emotions, to our habits.
Hmm.
Not like you just want to let go of everything and fall and
Yeah, yeah. Then you for sure need a recovery coach right away.
exactly
Here I
right,
am.
exactly. You have to take it in your own time.
Mhm.
But there is a real beauty to how the seasons work and how they remind us to do exactly what is happening out in nature. So,
Mhm.
and this is a hard time of year. I know you speak to a lot about seasonal affective disorder, where as soon as the light starts to change and the time starts to shift, people can get very, very dark inside of themselves. And
Mhm.
so, whatever support they can reach for, that's healthy for them and that keeps reminding them of these deep, deep connections that we have to the natural world.
Mhm.
Um, you can't go wrong there.
Mhm.
Nature is one of our best teachers, and also where we derive a lot of our medicine. So always good to remind people of that. And acupuncture is just one way to do that. Ayurveda is another. There are many, many modalities that will get you there, or help you find your place wherever the season may be for you. So
I want to take a moment and point out, and then we're going to sign off. First of
okay.
all, real quick, will you say your email address? Will you just spell it?
Sure, it's ionahx@gmail.com.
And
ionahx@gmail.com.
okay. And
And
your
my Instagram is tricky for me because, as you know, I'm hit or miss with Instagram.
so email her or message me
Email's
if you
probably
need
best.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This Instagram is like an incognito. I'm always incognito online, so it's not the best way to get me.
I've seen you in the mix though. It's not like you're you know how this
You
shit
have
works.
I do, but I've been off Instagram for a very long time, and I
No, and
just
I'm a
hopped
big
back on.
I support that. I support you in that.
Thank you.
For sure. Absolutely. I'm, right now trying to get myself exposed to so many people
Yes,
who need, recovery coaching and stuff right now. So that's why I've,
absolutely.
tried to swallow the, whatever the saying is, to have a new relationship with it, because it's kind of essential for me right now. Because you've
Absolutely.
been in Denver for a long time. You know, a lot of people here, and I've only been back for
Yeah.
4 to 5 years and have kind of been in my own I have a home yoga studio too, everybody, in case you didn't know that, down in near DU. So I run a little home yoga studio, and I haven't fully dove into the recovery world here, to the yoga world. I've just kind of been enjoying
Mhm.
life a little differently than before. So this is like, okay, now I got to get on and spread the word that this is what I do. So we have
Yeah.
1 minute. We're gonna sign off from here, and then we're gonna sign back on, and we're gonna talk about
Okay.
recovery stuff. And I just
Sounds
want to
good.
thank everybody who came in live, and anybody who's watching this recorded version. Um, please reach out to Ionah if this is intriguing to you. She's really, really magical. I can speak to that personally, personal experience. And even just today, talking to you and doing a few little oil things here, it's just like being in the present and working with somebody who cares is tremendously healing itself. And then you add
Mhm.
on all of the training and the science and everything else behind it, and it's like it's so powerful. So let's take care of ourselves, and reach out. Links are in the bio, and have a wonderful everything, everybody.
Thanks, Nikki.
You're
See you
welcome, Ionah.
soon.
Okay, see you very soon. Bye.
Bye.